Hi everyone, my name's Hazel and I'm an author and a PhD student, and in today's video we're going to be talking about how to develop and how to write a good villain. So I've already done 2 other videos on how to develop a character and how to write a good character, but I didn't really talk about villains in them. Like, I mentioned them briefly since both videos were kind of like, this is generally what you do for all of your characters. But I do feel like villains are a bit different, and I actually do really enjoy writing a good villain, both in my original stuff and in my fanfiction. So first, let's define it. What is a villain? Well, actually in writing, the villain isn't usually called the villain. It's usually referred to as the antagonist, which doesn't actually mean the villain. To me, the word villain means the bad guy. The antagonist doesn't actually mean the bad guy. So antagonist doesn't mean bad guy, so they literally mean the opposite of the protagonist. The protagonist doesn't necessarily have to be a good guy, nor does the antagonist necessarily have to be evil. They just have to want the opposite things of each other. That's what makes them the antagonist and the protagonist. One isn't necessarily good to begin with, it's the character that you create around that title that makes them a good or bad person. So let's take some examples. Let's start with Star Wars. So for example, the protagonist of the original Star Wars films, the main protagonist anyway, is Luke Skywalker, who is in this case the hero of the films. He is a good person, he wants good things for the galaxy. Whereas the complete opposite of him, the main antagonist of the films, is his dad, Darth Vader, who doesn't want that, and in this case, Darth Vader, yes, is a bad person. So in this case, the antagonist is a bad person and the protagonist is a good person. However, let's take another example. For example, the Shakespeare play Macbeth. So if you don't know what Macbeth is about, Macbeth is a thane in Scotland, which I'm not really sure what it is, but it's like I guess like a lord of a certain area of land. There is a big battle at the start of the play, and he comes across these 3 witches who predict he'll be the thane that he already is, the thane of another place as well, and he will eventually become king. And Macbeth doesn't understand how, because the king is alive and he has 2 heirs next in line for the throne. However, when he arrives home, word has been sent that he's now the thane of this new place as well, and he's pretty shocked. So he tells his wife what these 3 witches said to him, that he's going to be king. So him and his wife plot to murder the king so Macbeth can become the king instead. Now, in the case of Macbeth, quite clearly Macbeth is the bad person. He is the baddie. He ends up killing quite a lot of people, or at least getting other people to kill him for him. He doesn't always do it himself. However, he is the protagonist in this instance because he is the main character. However, the main antagonist of Macbeth is called Macduff because he doesn't want Macbeth on the throne. He finds out that Macbeth and his wife, Lady Macbeth, more than likely killed the king and framed his son so Macbeth could be king. He is the complete opposite to Macbeth in that he wants the true heir on the throne and not Macbeth, who killed the king. So he wants to take down Macbeth. So in this situation, Macduff is the antagonist because he wants the opposite of Macbeth. However, Macduff is the good person in this situation, but is still the antagonist. So I hope that makes it clear, but if not, we're just going to use one more example, and that would be Donald Trump and Joe Biden. So for example, in the future, if someone were to make a film about this presidential election, this presidential race, who would be the antagonist and the protagonist? Well, I guess that would depend on, first of all, your political beliefs, and second of all, who the film is kind of like narrated from. Is it like from Donald Trump's perspective, or is it going to be from Joe Biden's perspective? In my mind, the good guy in this situation, sorry to impress my political beliefs on you, is Joe Biden, whereas Donald Trump is the bad guy, but that wouldn't make them the protagonist or the antagonist of this film. For example, if the film was shown from Donald Trump's perspective, from his camp, he would be the protagonist of the film and Joe Biden would be the antagonist, but in my opinion, Joe Biden would be the good guy and Donald Trump would be the bad guy. So I guess it also does depend on your perspective of what you think a good guy is and what you think a bad guy is. Just remember, the protagonist isn't necessarily a good person and the antagonist isn't necessarily a bad person. It just means that they oppose each other, they want to stop the other person. However, for this video we're not really going to be talking about the opposites of protagonist and antagonist and all the different things we could go into there. We're not going to do that. As the title suggests, we are going to be looking at the villain, the bad guy, the person who is a bad guy. Whether you want them as the protagonist or the antagonist, the person who is bad in this piece of writing, that's what we're going to be looking at today. And honestly, I think the main one point to writing a good villain, a good bad guy, whoever it is, whether you have multiple of them or you just have one main one, they need a strong reason, a strong purpose as to why they are opposing what the protagonist wants. Now, I say this in all my character videos, when you have a character, you gotta ask, like, what's their role in the story? Why do they do that? What's their motivation behind that ambition in life? In order to make the story compelling, and in order to give the reader some emotion to latch onto, for something for them to get behind and be like, yes, yes, I want this too for you, it needs to be something, you know, reasonable. It needs to be something good and compelling. You just need to ask yourself, what is their reason why they want to stop the hero of this story? Why do they want to do it so badly that they've become this horrible person in the process? And just keep asking yourself that and reminding yourself of that as you develop this character, as you write this character. If they have a strong purpose and you are aware of that purpose 100%, it will literally write itself for you, in my opinion. It usually does for me. However, I will say it should be like in keeping with the character. So for example, let's take Legally Blonde. The antagonist, I guess at the start of the film anyway, is probably Vivian, and I guess a bit Warner, because Elle wants what she has. She wants to be engaged to Warner, she doesn't want Vivian to be engaged to Warner, and that's reasonable for who Elle is as a person. She's not some evil mastermind, she's a sorority girl who is now a law student. That's reasonable for her character. So if you're going to set something in a high school and all the antagonist wants is the main character's boyfriend and her whole purpose is jealousy, that's fine. When I say they need a reason, it doesn't have to be something big and otherworldly, like they want to take over the world because they were bullied as a child or something like that. It doesn't have to be incredibly deep. It just has to be compelling and realistic for that character, and also something you can pull off as well. So like I said, just ask yourself, why does the bad guy want to take down the good guy? Do they perhaps have something they want? If the answer is yes, what is that thing? But why do they want it? Why is this thing they have, whether it's a person, an object, just something in life, why do they want it so badly? Just keep asking yourself why until you've exhausted all the possibilities. Why do they want it so badly that they've become such a horrible person in the process? And also ask yourself, what are the repercussions if they don't get this thing? So for example, not that I think Elle Woods is a bad guy, but her purpose in Legally Blonde at the start anyway is to get Warner back from Vivian, and if she doesn't get Warner back, she feels like she's going to be lonely forever, no one will ever love her. She just loves Warner so much, she doesn't understand how she could possibly move on and love somebody else. She doesn't know what's going to happen if she doesn't get Warner back. Those are going to be the repercussions for her. So you really need to follow it through and think, okay, well if they don't get it, what's going to happen and why is that going to be so bad for them, and can they fix it? Is it something fixable? And if you want to write like a classic bad guy, like a really cool villain, I would look at children's films and honestly Disney films. Disney films have really, really great villains in them, and one of my favourite villains from Disney films is Mother Gothel in Rapunzel, or I guess Tangled in Disney's case. So Gothel is the main antagonist in my opinion. Obviously there are some other antagonists, like there's two guys who are working with Finn, they're also antagonists, but I wouldn't describe them as the main antagonist, the main villain in Tangled. So Mother Gothel is using this flower, she's singing it to make herself look youthful, and that flower is taken to help Rapunzel's mother in childbirth, and Rapunzel kind of becomes a living embodiment of this flower. So Mother Gothel has to kidnap Rapunzel in order to keep her youth, and she locks her away in this tower so no one else can find her, so Mother Gothel can stay youthful forever. And she does come across in Tangled as a very shallow woman. She doesn't actually really love Rapunzel, she just wants Rapunzel for her hair and the youth that it will bring Mother Gothel. She wants to keep Rapunzel locked away in this tower so she can keep her forever, not because she loves her like a daughter, but so she can remain youthful forever. So that's something a bit bigger, and obviously it's a bit more abstract since it is fantasy and it involves magic. But let's take another Disney film, one of my favourite Disney films, High School Musical 2. Now the antagonist in like kind of all the High School Musical films arguably is Sharpay, and not so much in the third one, but definitely the first and definitely the second one. She is at least one of the antagonists, and her whole motivation behind her antagonistic, her bad guy villain behaviour is because she fancies Troy and she doesn't want Gabrielle to have him, so she spends basically most of the first and the second film trying to break them apart, which ultimately, as we all know, brings them back together. And like I said, Sharpay's purpose in High School Musical 2 isn't something big or otherworldly like Mother Gothel in Tangled, or even like the antagonist in Die Hard 3, whose name I've conveniently forgotten. I'm so sorry, I'm really bad with names. But you know, Sharpay is a high school student. Why would she want to take over the world like in Die Hard 3? That's not realistic for her character, nor is it realistic for the rest of the story. She's a high school student who really likes this boy, and she doesn't want this other girl to date him. If that's the reason you want to use for the villain in your piece, then that's perfectly fine, as long as you keep the purpose in mind all the way through, and as long as it's something really strong for the character, something the character, you know, like really strongly believes in. So after you've got this whole purpose thing down, you can make this villain of yours eccentric or as natural as you like, as long as you keep this purpose strong. Honestly, with any character, as long as they have A, a purpose in the narrative, and B, just a purpose in general, like what do they want in life, you're fine. Like those are, to me anyway, the fundamentals of creating and writing a good character. Those are what makes a good character believable, and a villain having a strong reason for why they're doing what they're doing and what are the repercussions if they don't do this thing. That's what makes a good villain. So yeah, I hope that was helpful. That's usually just what I ask myself when I create my own villains. But that was all for today, and I hope you all stay safe, and I will see you all next time. Bye!